So hello, welcome everyone who is joining currently. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. My name is Chelsea Meisner, and I am a food scientist with Perennia, and my role here is to provide support to the beverage industry via our beverage services. We are here today to dive into the 2024 food and drink trends. 4 key trends in the Canadian market, why they are important, and what companies can do to engage with the trends will be discussed. Lynn Dornblaser from Mintel has joined us today to talk about these topics. Lynn has more than 30 years of experience in product trend knowledge. She applies her unique perspective on markets and new product development to tailored research and extensive public speaking. On behalf of everyone here today, I just want to thank Lynn for sharing her thoughts and knowledge with us. Just a couple quick housekeeping things before we get into it. This webinar is brought to you today through our Food Ventures program with funding through the Sustainable Canadian Agriculture Partnership. Lynn is going to give us her presentation, and then we will have a question period at the end. You can submit your questions, though, anytime via the Q&A button. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, try the magical trick of refreshing or reopening your browser. And sometimes if you're connected via a VPN, that'll mess this stuff up. So just disconnect if you're on one. And if all else fails, this is being recorded and will be made available via our Food Feed newsletter on our website at a later date. So I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen. Okay, now let's get into the good stuff. So Lynn, I'll pass it over to you and you can start your presentation with us.
Great, thanks, Chelsea. And I think I'm sharing my screen. All right, you should be seeing my presentation in full screen mode.
You are good, yes.
Excellent. Okay, so welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today. There's quite a bit to talk about because when we take a look at trends and when we think about trends, we're looking really kind of high level. And so to drill down and talk about what it means very specifically for food and drink, what it means for product development, there's a lot in here to talk about, even though there aren't a huge number of slides. So just really briefly, just to remind everybody of who we are, I'm from Mintel. Mintel is a market research company, as you probably know, and we've been doing this a long time. Mintel's been around for 50 years. I personally have been looking at new products and new product trends since the mid-1980s. But as a research company, there are a lot of things that we do. What you're going to see here is you're going to see new product examples and some new product introduction data, which comes from our global new products database. We track new product introductions in 86 countries around the world. We also do a lot of consumer research in a number of countries, including Canada. And so, except for a couple data points, I think every data point in here that's consumer related is specific to the Canadian market. We also have a number of experts. I'm a little bit of a generalist. I talk about all kinds of different things, but we have a number of experts, including a couple folks who only look at trends, actually several who only look at trends. And much of what you see comes from a lot of the work that many of my colleagues have done. So that just sets the stage as to who we are and why I'm here talking about all of this. But I wanted to give just a couple slides of big picture context before I really jump into the trends and start talking about them. First off, as of course you know, food from home, food away from home are significant expenditure categories for consumers in Canada. And you can see, this comes from Statistics Canada, you can see here how expenses break out. I didn't show all of them because there are a lot, as you can imagine, but housing accounts for 1/4 of consumer expenditure. transportation about another 15 or so percent. And then you see in-home food there in the green. And if you go on around that circle just a little bit, you see another shade of green, and that's food service. And those two together account for quite a bit. But what that means, I think what the big picture here is that consumers in Canada are, as you can see, so much of their expenditure goes towards housing, and that has become more and more challenging in the last several years. And like we see with consumers in many different countries, consumers in Canada are squeezed. It becomes a bit more challenging to maintain the lifestyle that you might have had before, to buy the things that you want to buy, to have the home that you want to have. And so consumers are looking for ways to do the right thing whenever possible, whether that is spending less on some categories, trading down a bit in some other categories. And so this whole idea of value and products that deliver on their promises is, so value is not just low price, it's also food and beverage, in this case, that deliver on its promises. That's something that I think is a big overarching trend that impacts every single thing. So keep in mind that whole concept of value, that big picture idea of value, as I'm talking about the big trends that we'll be talking about in just a little bit. But I wanted to provide just a tiny bit of context, and there's so much more, so much deeper that we can go. But I wanted to show you, in taking a look at new product introductions in Canada, what we see in terms of categories that have shown increases in new product introductions, and the claims that have shown increases as well. Now, just to be really clear, this isn't dollar volume, it isn't market growth. This is about innovation. It's about number of product introductions in the marketplace. And that's one way to look at growth. And that's the way we tend to do that on our global new products database. But as you look here first at the column that's all the way to the left, those are the, I believe it's 8 categories that have shown the most amount of increase in terms of new product introductions between 2019 and 2023. So a snapshot before the pandemic and a snapshot mostly after the pandemic. And what you see is some of those issues that we talked about during the pandemic, cooking at home more, we're drinking alcohol more, all of that. Those have stayed with us. We're continuing to do that. The category that has seen the most increase has been hot beverages. So that's usually coffee and tea, also hot chocolate that you would prepare at home to have a hot drink. Sweet spreads at the second one with the most amount of growth, so think jams and jellies there. But that gives you a sense then of what it is that companies are doing, what's resonating with consumers, because these are the categories that continue to show increase. In the center there are the claims that have shown the most amount of increase over time. And as you take a look at that, something really stands out, and that is how many of those claims are about environmental issues, environmentally friendly product, ethical, sustainable. That's about soil health, for example. Even you could even put vegan in that group as well. Environmentally friendly package. And then the other claims that are on this list that are growing the most are ones that are about clean label and wholesomeness and all of that. No additives and preservatives, free from artificial colorings. And again, vegan falls under that as well. Plant-based, the one that has grown the most. And we could have a whole separate discussion just on plant-based and what is going on in that particular realm of product introductions. But I just wanted to provide this quick little snapshot of some context as to what we see going on out there in the marketplace. But let's talk for a second then about what these 4 trends are. These are the 4. I'm going to walk through them in order. So we'll talk about each of these 4 in some detail. At the very end of the presentation, I've got exactly the same slide, but with some things to think about for each of these particular trends. So instead of my explaining them now, let's just jump right in and talk about the first one, which is about trust the process. It's about processed food, ultra processed food, a little bit about the controversy around all of that, and the need for clear communication. So here's what we see going on out there in the marketplace. As you know, so many consumers are talking about ultra processed foods, and so many news outlets then shorten that and call them UPFs. To us, it feels like ultra processed is the evolution of junk food, clean label. The bottom line, what this is all about is two things. One, it's consumers looking at what's on pack, understanding what is in the food and beverage that they eat and drink, and being concerned about those things that they don't understand. What it's also about is it's about, quite honestly, it's about the failure of the food and beverage industry to get on top of this 5 or 6 years ago when it first started being talked about, and to help consumers understand what those things are in the foods that they eat. And as you can see with the data point there, consumers say that they do try to avoid packaged foods with some ingredients. And so that really ties into this whole idea of ultra processed foods. But what we see going on is we see more talk about what the difference is between processed and ultra processed. I think some consumers at least are beginning to understand that processed foods is pretty much every single thing out there in the marketplace that you could buy. And what is beginning to happen is companies are beginning to talk more about what they do to get the product to be what it is. So, for example, this nutrition drink Huel has an article where it talks about what ultra processed foods are. What we also see is we see some rating programs that will show you that in just a second, like Nova or the SIGA ratings. But we do see some companies talking about some of the positives of processed foods, about the nutrition, about the safety and security of the products, about how some processing can help improve sustainability, for example. So we are beginning to see some of those conversations take place. What we also see is Canadian consumers they're okay with having processed foods in moderation, as you can see here. So you can see with this chart, if you draw your attention to the blue portion, that's 43% of consumers somewhat agree with that statement. You add that to those who strongly agree, and that's over half of Canadian consumers who say, yep, highly processed foods are fine in moderation as part of a balanced diet. So clearly, consumers are concerned, but they're beginning to understand just a little bit. I think one of the big things to take away is there is a place for processed food, ultra processed food in the marketplace, but it's important to provide choice to consumers and to provide it at all price levels. Because for some consumers, as you know, every single penny counts when they're grocery shopping, and they still may want to engage in some of these trends and in some of these important areas that might cost more, and they can't afford to do it. So any way that you can provide them with a choice is a real positive. So we do see some interesting products out there that are better for you in some way, and also talk about being less processed. So alternatives to other choices that are on the market. And these are just two. The Life Smart lasagna that you see there talks about being a good source of fiber, and talks about all of the vegetables that are in that lasagna and the wholesomeness of the products. It also talks about how many of the ingredients are from Canada. The Annie's product, we've seen Annie's on the market for quite some time, and it's really known for talking about organic ingredients. And you can see there, it says on front of pack, it's made with real cheese. So really conveying that wholesomeness and that goodness as an alternative to other products that might be on the market that are similar. But I think what's next when it comes to this particular trend is more transparency, more statements about exactly what's in the product, exactly how it got to be the way it is. So this happens to be an example from France that incorporates that Nova score on its juices. But the thing that it does also that's quite interesting is it devotes quite a bit of room on pack. Now it's in a carton that's got 4 really good sides to provide a lot of information. So it's got the real estate to do it, but it devotes quite a bit of space in talking about what the Nova score is, how, why this product has a Nova score of 1, which is the best one. It also talks about the sugar reduction of this particular juice and how that happens and all of that. So some products can do this much more effectively than others, but I think look for more companies looking to things like the Nova score or other scoring things that are out there to help consumers understand why the product is the way it is. So that's our first trend. The second one is what we call climate changes, comfort endures. Well, consumers are worried about climate change. They're worried about sustainability, but that isn't the most important thing on their list. They also are looking for products that provide comfort or something familiar to them. So as you can see, one of our other analysts made this mention here about sustainability isn't a selling point. It really should be essential to products. And what that also means is sustainability is simply one aspect of products that consumers look for. They expect companies to take the lead. We also know that they expect companies to bear the cost of sustainability efforts, but they also are interested in other things when it comes to the food and beverage that they eat and drink. They want things to taste good. They want it to remind them of a happier time, perhaps. They want a bit of indulgence. They want things that are healthy. Oh yeah, they want it to be sustainable as well. So all of these things work together. And we see some products doing a really good job of delivering that idea of sustainability, but also something that is comforting or indulgent or a little bit fun. So the Kettle Chips brand, with all of its really unique flavors, it just happens to be one of them here. They've got a very good story about less packaging, and what that means in terms of keeping plastic waste out of landfills. The one in the center there is Mondelez's Cadbury Dairy Milk. And the company talks about the Cocoa Life certification program. That's all about sustainably sourced cocoa. And then the third one, it takes this idea of comfort or something that's a little bit special and elevated benefit to a somewhat different place. It's all about being from an artisan bakery, with being made in Canada, with many of the ingredients being Canadian based as well. So all about that localness and that artisanal quality. But it should be said that when we ask consumers what's important to you when shopping for food, that environmental issues do resonate with Canadian consumers. Yes, sugar, fruits and vegetables, those are the most important. But look at natural ingredients, organic ingredients as well, and even avoiding animal-derived foods and ingredients. All 3 of those, link to a focus on being better for the environment. Also, too, I think one other thing to be thinking about is consumers say that products that have a lesser environmental impact, that they often perceive them as being healthier. And that too is important because consumers do look for good health. And that is a a very good way that to link that idea of sustainability to other factors, in this case, to healthy formulations. The third trend to talk about is what we call age reframed. Well, there's a lot to talk about here, and I think one of the things that really stands out to me is in the context of this particular trend, the focus is just a little bit more on the Gen X consumer. But the reality is, being me personally being older than Gen X, the reality is baby boomers as well have been through many of these issues too, and have also done some good work in debunking some of the stigmas that we've seen over time. But I think the big thing to think about here when it comes to aging is that the conversation continues to shift. We're talking much more about women's health issues. This is a word cloud from a bit of social media listening. We're talking about women's issues more. We're talking about things that go beyond just physical well-being as well. We're talking about mental well-being and well-being in every way that you can think about it. And that really is a change that was started, I think, by baby boomers, but has really been turned up quite high by Generation X. We talk a lot when it comes to this whole idea of health and wellness. We talk a lot about this idea of health span. So instead of talking about lifespan, how long you live, instead, there's been a shift to talking more about health span, which is how long in your life you have good health. And more, we see consumers in Canada and elsewhere focusing on this idea of eating healthy to live longer. You can see that data point there. It's over half of Canadian Gen X. And so keep in mind that the Gen X consumer, the oldest ones are in their late 50s. So they're not to retirement age yet. They've got a little ways to go, but they are focused on eating healthy to live longer. What's also interesting is if you look at the data for younger consumers, for millennials and for Gen Z, which are the youngest ones, they too are interested in eating healthy in order to live longer. So consumers are playing the long game. They're looking longer term and thinking, I need to optimize my health for as long as I possibly can, so I better start now. You could see that bit of research from the UK that is on UK consumers, that Gen X live longer, but they're in worse health than prior generations. So clearly important for this Gen X consumer to be focused on eating healthy to live longer. And we do see the Canadians prioritize health as they age. So you can see here, we ask consumers how often they try to eat healthy. And the choices were all of the time, most of the time, some of the time. And we broke it out by age groups, as you can see here. And what I find really interesting is those youngest consumers, 18 to 34, they are the ones, they say that they eat healthy all of the time with almost the same frequency as consumers over 55. So clearly, younger consumers are thinking about eating healthy now. Although they are the most likely to say that they try to eat healthy some of the time. So indulging just a little bit more. But I think the point to take away from this is, as I said earlier, consumers, regardless of age, are looking to optimize their health because everyone wants to live as long as possible, as well as they possibly can. And we see some fascinating product innovation out there in the marketplace. And some of these things really do resonate best with the Gen X consumer. And one of the things, as I mentioned before, is how we see products that aren't just about physical well-being, but about some of the other aspects of well-being as well. So we see for for example, on the left-hand side of the bright pink package, the fig and strawberry energy bites. So that's about satisfying sugar cravings naturally. But I like this statement on pack. It offers the best of nature with healthy natural products, good for the body and soul and the environment. Body, soul, and environment. That feels very much like something focused to a Gen X consumer. In the center is a hydration sports drink mix that is organic and plant-based, so offering something that is more environmentally responsible, perhaps, and more natural than some of the other products that might be on the market. And the last one there, the greenhouse product is a shot drink. So it's a small quantity that could be drunk on its own as a shot or diluted in water or something else that is designed to help with sleep. And that too is something that we see much more conversation about, is that need to improve sleep, because we're all really stressed out and really tired all the time. The last trend is one that we call eating optimized. Well, this is all about convenience and how we see technology helping to streamline menu planning, shopping, and cooking. And you try your best when you put these things together to find images that help tell the story. And this one does help tell the story, but it helps tell the story of technology and convenience from about 1989, when we first saw microwaves coming onto the market and how that changed everything. But there's more change ahead of us. And that change really is about artificial intelligence. I think this comment here from the COO of Instacart really tells the story so well. How can companies help consumers figure out what to do for dinner? Because it is a challenge to go to the grocery store and figure it out. And so the thinking is that AI is going to help consumers do that. Helping consumers find that balance between going to make the same thing every night of the week like we always have, we're going to do our Taco Tuesday like we always do, or being a little more creative when it comes to meal planning and shopping and cooking, and how AI can help consumers do that. Take some steps out of the complicated process of figuring out what's for dinner and how to cook it and get it ready for the family. And consumers are open to it. They're open to the conveniences that AI can provide. And so here we have some attitudes regarding AI, as you can see. Making daily chores easier, which could be anything, including cooking. Make it easier for shopping online. So that might be for food and beverage, but for other things as well. And make consumers value things more that are created by humans. And so the example that we gave in this questionnaire was books and art. But if you think about that, that's also about having placing a greater value on that home cooked meal. Maybe that chatbot helped you find the ingredients that you needed online for the dish that you wanted to make, but that's going to make you value that final product even more than you might have previously. So when it comes to AI, one of the things that's next that we're beginning to see already is how AI is helping companies create products. I'm sure you've heard about everything that Coca-Cola has done with many of its limited edition flavors. This Y3000 was created in conjunction with input from Coke fans and also AI. It was introduced in a number of markets around the world. But also this ice cream that you see here, this caramel and salty popcorn ice cream, which sounds terrific, from Poland. The company says that it was created with the help of the AI. So that's what we see from a longer term, big picture view when it comes to technology and when it comes to helping consumers get dinner on the table. But in the meantime, there's opportunity in finding ways to make meal prep just a little bit easier. So we ask consumers, how many hours do you spend a week on food prep at home? And you can see, again, broken up by age. The younger you are, the less time you spend. Totally makes sense. But you can see how many hours in a week consumers spend. And really, when you think about it, it's not all that much. It's not a huge amount of time that they're spending. But nevertheless, there's still opportunity to provide those quick and convenient solutions that might be prepared meals, sides, or helpers. And a couple examples really quickly as to what we see in the market. When it comes to prepared meals, it doesn't get any easier than a chopped salad kit that's got everything, including the dressing. Just open it up and serve it. You're all set to go. We see plenty of products like that. Also, all of the frozen convenient meals that we see as well. Meal helpers like this Lilydale turkey breast is another great example. Something else about this one is it's in a 2-pack. Less waste, easier to portion out. And the third one is a shelf-stable pouch pack that heats in 60 seconds to make risotto. Normally, risotto takes quite a long time. So here's something that is quick and simple, and again, delivers on its promises. So that's a really quick look at those 4 big trends, but just a couple final thoughts, a couple things to think about. When it comes to trust the process and ultra-processed foods, I think the opportunity is to help consumers understand what's in the products that you offer, why those ingredients are there, and what purpose they serve. And if you don't have room on pack to do that, use a QR code. The pandemic brought QR codes to the front of consumer consciousness again, and they're actually using them. So that's a way to communicate with them. For climate change as comfort endures, as I said, consumers want to do the right thing, but have to balance that with everything else in their lives. I think the real opportunity is for companies to bundle those benefits together. So it's not just about sustainability, but it's about an elevated experience. It's about convenience. It's about other things as well. When it comes to age reframed, just keep in mind, everyone is trying to optimize their health. And health is very big picture, much bigger than it ever used to be. And the last one, eating optimized. Watch for AI to continue to provide easy and less time-consuming ways to shop and cook and even eat. And while we wait for those machines to take over our lives, there's still plenty of opportunity for those convenient meal solutions. So I hope this has given you some things to think about and some good ideas. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we can talk a little bit more about questions that you might have or anything else that you might want to know about. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Lynn. There's a lot of great information there that I was just making bad notes to think about later. If anyone has any questions, please fire those into the Q&A part at the bottom of your screen, and we'll take a look at them here in a second. While you do that, I snuck a couple links into the chat as Lynn was finishing up there. And quickly, the first one will bring you to Perennia's product development services, where you can sign up for our newsletter, as I mentioned before. And that'll allow you to see the link to this webinar later. And the second link is to our Food Ventures funding program, which provides more details on the financial support that it offers for the acceleration and innovation of safe Nova Scotia local product. So you can check that out if you're interested. Okay, let me just quickly look and see if we've got anything here. It doesn't seem so quite yet, but I had a couple thoughts. So quickly, Lynn. Oh, nope, we got one. 1 second. Okay, so first question. How does AI help in creating products? Is it like things such as flavor suggestions?
Yes, absolutely. That's a prime way where we see AI providing help in creating products. But if you think about how generative AI works, if you are accessing like GPT or some of the others out there that draw from a number of different sources, with a little bit of training and a little bit of playing around, you can get back from it some really interesting ideas on what might be possible, because as it is looking far and wide at what consumers are saying, what's out there in the marketplace, all of that, it can take all that and come back with some really interesting and funky suggestions. Just to, with all of the data that we have our own closed system of generative AI, so it only uses our data. And we've posed it some of those types of questions, and it's absolutely fascinating what it comes up with in terms of flavors that you might not expect, or flavor combinations that you might not expect, or claims that might be a little bit niche that could have some opportunity. The one thing I have to say though, with anything related to AI when it comes to aiding product development, is it's an aid to product development, just like everything else out there. Whether it is outside consultants or doing focus groups or whatever it may be, it's one tool in the toolbox. But I think it's a really interesting tool that can help developers like open up their thinking just a little bit.
Yes, as a developer, it does. It's a whole new world, honestly. There's so much there that AI is just bringing to the forefront. So it's very interesting to see all the things that's happening with it. We got a second one. Oh, and a third popped up just as I was looking. Okay, how is retail price point trending in new product development success? So for example, premium price products versus discount.
I haven't done any really careful analysis of that to give you like a really hard answer, but in looking at what we see out there with innovation, we continue to see, and this is something that we've seen for at least a decade, we continue to see what I would call bifurcation in the market, where you see growth in premium products, growth in value priced products. But there are a couple things going on though that I think that are interesting to keep in mind. When it comes to those premium priced products, as I mentioned before, this idea of value is much more than just low price. It is about delivering on a product's values. And sometimes that means elevated values at an elevated price. So there's most definitely room in the marketplace for premium priced products, but they have to deliver a premium priced experience as well. When it comes to value, all you need to do is to take a look in so many countries at the growth in private label. And that gives you a really good sense as to what we see in terms of focus on value. But even beyond private label, and private label is very stratified all by itself, but looking at what we see with discount retailers, what we see with what might be termed basic private label, how we see those continue to grow, how we see more consumers shopping at stores like Aldi and Lidl, for example. Consumers are looking for low prices because they need to. And I think there's opportunities, I said before, in providing as much as you can in terms of elevated values at a very advantageous price as well. But to answer your question, Gary, I think what we see is we see both growing. Premium and value are both growing in the marketplace.
Okay, third one. All right, curious to know your thoughts about the trend to lower added sugar with non-nutritive sweeteners, but how they conflict with consumers looking for natural tasting or artisanal ingredients. So not even the stevia, the monk fruit, because that still has the chemical taste sometimes. So are consumers enjoying less sweet products, or is this market not quite saturated yet?
I think there's so many things to answer in that question.
There is, yes. There's a lot there.
we do see growth in use of non-nutritive sweeteners, and I think, yes, consumers want natural, they want less sugar, they want everything. I think they realize that a lot of times they can't have everything, and so they make trade-offs every single day. So as a result, you don't see Pepsi or Coca-Cola discontinuing their diet versions because consumers aren't buying them because of the sweeteners, because they are buying them just for some despite the sweeteners. But in terms of this whole idea of our consumers enjoying things that are less sweet, not entirely, no. Just as they aren't enjoying things that have less sodium. That's not happening, especially either. So I think for developers, there are a couple things to be thinking about. One is to think about the idea of experimenting with sweetness levels just a little bit. And that might be reducing the amount of sugar, reducing the level of sweetness a bit, but then is that amping up other flavor profiles? Is it making something that is fruit flavored be fruitier, but not as sweet, for example? And I think, you know, companies or I'm not going to lay blame here, but I think consumers have been trained in many markets to want sweeter and sweeter and sweeter and sweeter things. And so that happened gradually. Backing that down is also something that needs to happen gradually. Same thing with sodium reduction, which is a whole different conversation. So I think there's opportunity there in dialing down the sweetness while dialing up other values. But the reality is that if for many consumers, if they're looking for something that's less sweet or looking for something with less sugar, they'll make one of two choices, one of three choices. They'll go without, and I think that's the least likely choice. They will be more careful with the sugar sweetened products that they consume and perhaps consume less. Or they'll look to things that have some sugar, but not as much sugar as before.
Mhm.
So, for example, we see plenty of soda alternatives out there in the marketplace that have some sugar, but not as much sugar as a full sugar soda, for example. So it would be a combination of sweeteners. And in some cases too, consumers will say, this is what I need, and I'm okay with those non-nutritive sweeteners because it's giving me the taste profile that I want. Yeah, it's got a little chemically taste, but it's giving me that sweetness that I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's the sweetener world is very interesting.
So
I'm
challenging.
noticing all those things in products that I've been working on myself as well. Like it's, yeah, you hit all the right points there.
Yeah, and it all depends on who the target market is, exactly what the product is, and what you're able to do with that product. And some products you can't, there's not much you can do.
Exactly.
And what you think the market will bear, you know, how far you can push the envelope in, say, reducing sweetness levels in a confectionery product, for example.
Right.
You know, what can you do before consumers will say, no, this isn't the flavor that I'm looking
Yeah, it's a balance.
for. Totally.
We're creeping towards the end of the time, but there's a couple more questions here. So if we go over by just a couple minutes, if everyone's cool with that, we'll get a couple more in. So what do you see as the long-term trend with energy drinks?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
It's been so fascinating to see how the energy drink market has changed over the last 10 years. Because it used to be that energy drinks were about caffeine, taurine, ginseng, probably missing one of them. And it was about, it didn't matter what it tasted like. You knew it was going to taste bad, but it was going to give you that energy kick that you were looking for. And it was because of those specific ingredients. And what we've seen over time now is we've seen more products talk about steady energy, natural energy sources, you know, green coffee being one of those, for example. And So again, another bifurcation in the market where you've got many more products talking about those natural sources of energy, how it's not going to give you that rush and then a crash, all of that. And then on the other side, you've got liquid death, which is all about the caffeine and the boost and that giant can of drink. But I think big picture when it comes to energy drinks, it feels like the opportunity continues to be in finding those more natural energy sources, talking about no crash, talking about sustained energy. It feels like that's bigger picture where energy drinks seem to be going.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, we're just gonna try and pick a couple more here. Everybody's got lots of great questions. Is
I'll
the
comment really briefly on sodium reduction, because that's an easy one, because it links
go ahead.
so much to sugar reduction. Sodium reduction, we see companies do that sometimes, but they do it's what I call stealth reduction.
Mhm.
They reduce sodium, but they don't talk about it, because as soon as you say to consumers, we reduce the sodium, their assumption is that it's not going to taste good anymore. And so I think the opportunity there is to find ways to reduce sodium. Again, if it's about boosting up other flavor components so that it is still a product that tastes good, but to not tell consumers, because as soon as they hear less sodium, they think that's for someone with a heart condition. That isn't me. It's going to taste terrible. I'm not going to buy it.
A good way to do it. There was one here I saw that is the younger health-focused consumer moving away from alcohol beverages?
To a certain degree, they are. We see globally that the Gen Z consumer, which is the youngest one, the oldest Gen Z, I think, are 26. So they've got a few years of being alcohol drink buyers legally. They are less likely to drink alcohol at the age that they're at than millennials did at the age that they were at. We don't have really good data for Gen X and for baby boomers when they were in their 20s, but I suspect that it's been a decrease. Now, what we don't know is we don't know to what degree that habit will stay with them for the rest of their lives, or whether it's something that they're focused on right now. I have a feeling it's probably a little bit of both, but I think the opportunity is when it comes to consumer packaged goods. I think the opportunity is to continue to explore two different things. To continue to explore those flavored alcoholic beverages. So White Claw and the bajillion others that are out there in the marketplace, but to continue to explore what might be possible there that's new and different, and also to explore alternatives that are no alcohol or low alcohol that deliver on the flavor and the experience and the fun and all of that. Because in the end, for youngest consumers, that's what it's about. It's about the experience and a little bit less about consuming alcohol because it's alcohol. It's about consuming a fun beverage because you're out having fun.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, we are over time, so I probably, even though we haven't gotten to everybody's questions, but I'll get cut off here otherwise. So if you want, you can fire those questions to me and we can kind of address those at a later date, since we didn't have the chance to get to all of them today. But thank you for submitting all of these questions. And again, Lynn, thank you for taking the time to join us here today with all of that wonderful information. And I hope that it has potentially sparked some new ideas for everybody that was listening here today, as there's lots of great things going on in the food and beverage world. As I mentioned earlier, this is being recorded, and it will be available on our website later, and you can get notified about it through our newsletter when it is ready. So thank you, everybody who joined today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.